People think like, oh, I don't want to work my 9 to 5. I'm gonna go be an entrepreneur, and it's like, baby, that's 8 to 8. like that's all of your time. And I think people think that it's easier, and it's really just a different kind of hard. My name is Alyssa Nichols, and I am the owner of Eunioafit. Eunioafit is an all-women's gym in the Bishop Arts Oak Cliff area. We offer group training, personal training, and some accessory classes also. Accessory classes are classes like core and conditioning or mobility, dance cardio, things that aren't like necessarily necessities to your base training, but are good supplemental classes. The inspiration behind starting this gym was really just to create a safe space for women to explore health and wellness and strength training in an environment that felt like home, that was catered to their specific needs, and just to bring something to the community that really doesn't exist for women. When I think about the fitness industry and where it's at with relation to women's health, there's often a gap between what women need and what's actually being provided. So when we're talking about things like hormonal health and those type of things, a lot of times you see trainers and you see this kind of dialogue that is just push through the pain, that type of dialogue, which is helpful and can be true, but when you're dealing with women who are very complex, we have very complex systems, a lot of times it's more detailed than that when we're talking about things like PCOS, pregnancy, postpartum, endometriosis. All of these things impact a woman's ability to exercise and their progress, and they need to be considered when you're talking about training women. My degree is actually in art. I have a BFA in studio art, but I've been an athlete my whole life. I ran track on scholarship at Baylor, but my education really just stems from my desire to care for women. I think it takes a deep understanding, and once you understand how intricate the systems are, you really do have to dive into the root cause of things to be able to help women in the capacity that they need to be helped. Oh, that's easy. Women are my why. And that seems really simplistic, but it truly is the truth. That's the reason why Eunioafit exists. Women are my why. I love women. I care about our experiences. I care about our ability to navigate this world safely, to navigate trauma, and to create a sort of common thread and commonality between women, particularly in marginalized communities. Oh, how much time you got? The pros and cons to running a business, man. I think the pros are just being able to set your own schedule, being able to sort of dictate what you do, when you do, and how you do it. I think that there's a lot of freedom in that, and that's what a lot of people sort of chase when they decide to become an entrepreneur. I also think that pros are the interactions with other people. You're not relegated to a desk or to just the people that are in your office space or in your department. I've come in contact with, at this point, probably thousands of women, and from all different backgrounds. And so every time I interact with someone, I get to learn something. It's not just about me just spelling information or talking at people, but really creating an interaction that I think you only get in entrepreneurship as opposed to working in corporate. I think the cons are in the same right that I say freedom of time. I think that that comes with a lot of responsibility. I think that a lot of times people think like, oh, I don't want to work my 9 to 5. I'm gonna go be an entrepreneur. And it's like, baby, that's 8 to 8. like that's all of your time. And I think people think that it's easier, and it's really just a different kind of hard. So that's definitely a con. I think another big con of entrepreneurship is just figuring out what you're good at. Because I think entrepreneur has a catch-all sort of connotation behind it. Like, oh, as an entrepreneur, you wear a lot of hats, especially when you first start. Not even first start, I'm 10 years in and I'm still wearing a lot of hats. But it's really important to understand what your strengths are and when you need to hire out, when you need to delegate, when to expand, when to scale, all of those types of things. it can be really difficult. And I think that's where a lot of businesses have issues, is either scaling too fast or not scaling when they need to, or not getting help when they need to. It's a lot of decision making all of the time. So I talk often about having decision fatigue. It's a real thing when it's just constant this or that, especially when you don't have a ton of people to bounce your ideas off of. So that's definitely a con. And then of course there's money. I think unless you're doing something that, being a service-based business has its own level of difficulty as opposed to being product-based, for one. But I think that if you aren't necessarily, like, you don't hit it big early, it's a slow grind. And people don't realize that either. They see social media and they think like, oh, I'm gonna just put a workout program out and then I'm good. And it's like, yeah, okay. When you realize how difficult it is to keep people engaged in this day and age, you start to understand how hard it is to maintain a business for longevity. I get this question often about where I see my business in 5 years. And the truth is, I really don't know. I think that because of my personality, I'm very much a planner and a doer. I'm really good at executing. I have a lot of creativity, but with that comes sort of a pressure to always perform, to always have your next best thing, and you kind of lose sight of where you are. And so honestly, I'm in a season where I'm really leaning into surrender and leaning into what God is calling me to do in that season, because I want to get to the point where I appreciate the now. Because a lot of things that I prayed for 10 years ago, I'm living in now, but it's hard for me to appreciate them because I'm already on year 15 or year 20, or, you know, and it's good to have long-term goals, but I think if you do the small things well and you focus on the short-term things well, it sets you up for the long-term things without you even having to really think about it or like realize it. I don't even know if I would say that my relationship with God is a motivator. It just is. I think it's just ingrained at this point into who I am and everything that I do. It's like I'm at the point now of just complete dependence, and I think that's what a relationship with Christ really requires. I think that's why we have trials and tribulations, is because we are supposed to be continually dependent on God. And so it's more so, now that I'm aware of that, when I was a little bit younger, I feel like I was always going against the grain in that way. Like, I don't need nobody, like I can figure it out. And it's like, God has a way of breaking you down to where you're just like, oh, everything that I do was only because of God's grace. It's not because I'm some great person. I am, but all of that goes back to the Creator and what it is that He created me for. And if I keep that at the forefront of my mind, I feel like I really can't fail. And so I'm constantly just checking in with God. Like if I get an idea or, you know, I'm constantly just like asking God, like, is this what you want from me? Like, order my steps, those types of things. So I wouldn't say it's a motivation per se, as it's just kind of a character trait at this point. Man, Mythbusters as it relates to fitness. I'm gonna talk specifically about women's health. It'll be kind of applicable, I think, to men also, or just general health, but big Mythbusters is that somehow sweat is related to fat loss. You see people wearing sweatbands and sauna suits, and I always tell my clients, I'm like, baby girl, we in Texas. If sweat could make you fine, we all be fine. Wouldn't nobody be big. Like, you know, like we all look a certain way if you just sweat off fat. That's not science, that's really just marketing. So that's a big one. I think waist trainers, I feel like waist trainers is slowly starting to decline, which makes my soul happy. But people rely on that. They think that waist training is somehow, I guess, gonna train your waist. And that's not how that works. What waist training essentially does is it restricts your core, it restricts your pelvic floor, and it can actually lead to a lot more issues in the long run than women realize. I think now that we are starting to get more information about pelvic floor dysfunction, prolapse, pelvic pain, women are starting to understand the impact of things like corsets, because that's really what it is. It's just a corset. And it's a Band-Aid. People a lot of times will wear it because they have back pain and they think like, oh, this is gonna help me strengthen my core. And I always challenge people to not just think of, when you're thinking about marketing and these tactics, it's like, if somebody was gonna say like, oh yeah, I wanted to strengthen my bicep, they wouldn't put a corset around it. Like, that's not how you strengthen a muscle, it's not by constricting it. And so it seems really simple, but these concepts, because marketing is designed to literally market to you something that you may not even need, people will lose sight of just the basics of anatomy and physiology and how science works. So that's another big myth. I think also this idea that you're gonna squat your way to a big butt, you're gonna have some massive quads, which is no shade, no tea. I would like massive quads, but it's just it's just a ploy. You get these programs and it's like 100 squats to a big butt, and it's like, that's also not science. Like, you're not gonna squat your way to glutes. You have to hinge, you have to RDL, deadlift, hip thrust, those types of things. There's so much misinformation. I think the other big thing, it's not really a myth, but it's just something that I kind of want to touch on because it's a trend, is when we talk about like Ozempic and GLP-1s and those things. I don't think that they're bad things. I think the problem is that we are using them to replace training still. So when you have people that are on GLP-1s that do help you lose weight, they help to manage your appetite and other things, the important thing to understand is you still need to be lifting, because there's a difference between weight loss and fat loss, right? So if I'm taking something that is essentially putting me into a forced calorie deficit, I'm gonna lose weight, but I'm also gonna lose a lot of muscle mass. And muscle mass is important specifically for women when we talk about bone density, osteoporosis later in life, and those types of things. Also, the powdered greens, that is, my clients know that is like one of my biggest pet peeves. I understand, people are like, I don't like vegetables. Like, all right, grow up. I don't know, I don't know what to tell you. Like, stuff like that, if you're looking, like I had one of my clients bring her container of powdered greens to the gym, and we looked at it, and I'm like, it's literally like 3 grams of fiber per serving. Like, you could eat an apple, literally, and get more grams of fiber than it's just like, why would you want to powder your greens? I don't know. This one's really important. That strength training is going to make you manly. I think because we primarily strength train here, that's one of the common misconceptions, is you about to walk around looking swole. And I tell people all the time, I've been squatting my whole life. My legs have looked like my whole life. You would have to be on literal anabolic steroids in order for you to just be jacked, like as a woman. Now, there are some women that are genetically more predisposed to building muscle, that have higher testosterone levels and those types of things, but that's not the case for most women. I think you watch someone work out, and it's the same thing for men too. It's like you watch someone work out and they look real swole in the video, well, they are in the middle of a pump. Like, they literally have more blood pumping through their muscles, so they obviously look more ripped. Juicing is not, I wouldn't put juicing in the myth category per se. I do think that it's overused. People will go on juice cleanses, and really what they're doing is they're trying to lose a bunch of weight really quickly. And it's almost the same as like the sweat thing, people not understanding conceptually. If I go and starve myself, which is what juicing is, you're taking yourself into a calorie deficit, right? You're not eating protein, that type of stuff, you're gonna lose weight, but a lot of it's gonna be water weight, especially in 7 days. You're not gonna lose 10 pounds of fat in 7 days. So when you go and rehydrate, you're gonna weigh what you weighed before. And so I think it's just, again, it's just a lot of marketing things and social media, and there's this demographic of influencers that has sort of carved out a market in social media that's not really based on education and science. It's just based on what people respond the most to, an algorithm and clicks and those types of things. Okay, 2 things, maybe more than 2. But the first thing I always tell people is just to start. It literally, I think that people overcomplicate fitness because it's intimidating, right? Especially for women, it's like there's the fear of injury, there's the fear of looking silly, going into the gym and not knowing what you're doing. But just like with anything else, like to oversimplify it, you didn't know how to walk at one point. You just started, right? You started practicing, you started trying with anything that you learned at your job. First day at work, you didn't know everything there was to know about your position, but you started. Someone helped you, you did research. And so I think people need to understand that you just have to start, and you have to find an environment that is catered to helping you start and not just throwing you into the fire. When we talk about consistency, I think the biggest thing is to start small. A lot of times we go to our end goal, right? It's like, oh, I want to lose 20 pounds. And so I'm immediately going to go to everything that I can think to do that. I'm going to start working out twice a day, and I'm going to take my calories to something crazy like 1,200. And then you wonder why you can only do it for 4 days. And then you take 2 months off and then you go again. And so a lot of times you're just setting yourself up for failure by setting your goals too high. Like, just start with walking. Like, if you think about it, no one would literally go from laying on the couch to sprinting immediately. And so you have to start small. Like, what's one thing that you can do every day or every other day that you can sort of build on? So if I'm starting walking for 15 minutes, maybe I do that for 7 days or 14 days, and then I bump up to 30 minutes, then bump up to, so just making sure that your goals are actually attainable and you're not setting yourself up for failure by trying to do too much too soon. I would say it depends on what phase, but in this is gonna sound bad, but in the scaling phase, one of the pieces of advice I got early was slow to hire, quick to fire. And at the time I thought it was funny. I'm like, dang, that's cutthroat. But then I started having to manage people and understand that, and it made more sense. It's helped me sort of have a focal point, or just an understanding that people are gonna come into your life for a season. It's the same with business. Like, someone may come into your business in a certain position for a season. That does not mean that you are bound to that person. That's not to say that you use people just for what you can get from them. I try to make sure all of my relationships are symbiotic and there's an exchange of information and knowledge and experience. But you have to understand when someone or something doesn't align with your vision, and that vision is going to change, and you have to be adaptable. That's probably the biggest thing about business owning, is being adaptable, because there's gonna be a lot of changes. Shout out to SMB Wrld for the interview and taking the time to highlight small businesses. My name is Alyssa Nichols, owner of Eunioafit, where strong women don't just move, they move mountains.